Here we go. It's another week of the RotoWire Rundown, and it's for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Now, Len Hochberg from RotoWire there across the screen from me. Of course, I'm Keith Stewart from Read the Line. I'm so excited. I almost forgot to introduce us, Len. It's the Rocket Mortgage Classic. We have 10 guys in the top 50 in the official world golf rankings. I mean, we have a stacked betting board, DFS table. There's so much going on. I can't wait to get into all of this with you. If that sounds like hyperbole, it is. So let me take you a couple days back. Let's go to Sunday. Just real quick. I'm always curious what your takeaways are because you study the fields. You know, I know it wasn't only 70 guys. It was our last signature event, but what's your takeaway coming away from the Travelers?
No, I guess I was like, fool me 5 times, shame on me, or something like that, because I was thinking this was anybody's tournament. And Scottie Scheffler was there, and Scottie Scheffler was winning that tournament somehow, some way. And even when there were all these other guys in the mix, and and it's one thing to pick Scottie Scheffler when there are 72 holes to go, but to go away from Scottie when there are 4, 5, 6 holes to go. So it was just another incredible performance by him. But there was some pushback on Twitter X that the TPC River Highlands is a bit of anachronism. It's just not, there anymore. It shouldn't be there anymore. But first of all, they didn't hit what they hit last year. So they were, they didn't keep getting worse. But they're exciting tournaments almost every year, and a lot of playoffs and a lot of one-shot wins, whether it's a signature field or not. And the fans are electric. It's the number 2 gallery behind Phoenix most years. They treat the players great. Travelers has signed up through 2030 already. The PGA Tour needs all the friends it can get these days. So
True.
I'm fine with the tournament, and it's always been the week after the U.S. Open. The players have always come out even before it was a signature event.
I agree with all that, and I'll add to this. I mean, I go to a lot of these events, the Travelers. I mean, for the media and everyone involved, the volunteers, everyone's so nice. There's so much hospitality involved. They took this tournament off of life support, and they turned it into something that's actually special. And whether it was a signature or not, it would still have a better field than what we're looking at this week. And it's always the week after the U.S. Open. Obviously, the schedule needs to adapt in some ways to these signature events kind of bookending or being around these major championships in order to do them any sort of justice. I mean, folks keep saying, is 8 too many? Is 3 too, how about just putting them in a spot where they actually feel like their signature and they're not just being overwhelmed by these major championships? I mean, that would be a good place to start. But I don't have a problem with a birdie fest every once in a while. What I have a problem with is when we go to TPC Craig Ranch or PGA West Nicholas Tournament, whatever, for the Amex, and these golf courses are just brutal, right? TPC River Highlands is a really cool golf course. The average fan would love to play that place. I mean, there's just holes that you can have fun on, you can compete on, and then there's holes that'll be brutal to you. And it's always in great shape. The crowd always, kicks in up there. I mean, they almost I guess they went a little too over the top at the end on Sunday, but that's a story for another day for us Tom Kim backers. I mean, we're going to move the hole. Is that what we're going to do? We're going to move the hole that we just birdied to get in the playoff. Don't get me started, Len. All right. So, but Travelers overall, I'm happy that they had a great tournament. The TV ratings were up. And as far as I'm concerned, let's keep that birdie fest where it is. And maybe we can massage a couple of these other ones.
It's really hard with the signature events if they have 8, because the reason they were all bunched, and maybe too bunched, but the reason they were bunched, and this, is that they wanted to clear the decks and have them out of the way to give the lesser guys, the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season to be able to get into every event to qualify for the playoffs. I mean, no one would argue with that. So we don't want to box somebody out in late July from getting into a tournament. This is their jobs, their livelihoods. So you have 8 signature events, and 3 of the 4 in the first half of the year, first 6 months, you have 8 signature events, 3 majors, the players. That's 12 tournaments in the first, that's 2 a month right there. And you don't have the major in January. You don't have the major in February. So maybe, move them up, although you did have one signature event. So it's with 8 signature events and wanting to get them out of the way, there isn't a lot of wiggle room. They can avoid what we just saw, 2 signatures in a major, but this is what it is.
Yeah, I don't envy the schedule people. That's for sure. I mean, they had 3 signatures out of the way by the end of February, and it still feels like everything's jammed in, which is difficult. And I mean, if the goal is money at the end of the day, I mean, we're going to get on a tangent here, but that's all right because you and I love to talk golf. If the goal is money, I mean, Scottie's already raked in like 27.7 million. And if you think that live is where you need to go to make more money, well, Joaquin Niemann is leading that money list with 12 million. Now, I know, Keith, it's not apples to apples, and they got those signing bonuses and everything. But if this becomes like a long-term thing on both sides, and the tour is throwing, I mean, second place on tour is Xander at 12.6 million. So obviously, Scottie, maybe a bit of an outlier this year. And we'll talk more about that in a second because I'm curious to get your opinion on where he stands against Tiger at this point, so on and so forth. But it's just kind of funny to me how, everything was about going to live to make money and so on and so forth. And now all of a sudden you've got 2 guys on the PGA tour that have earned more money than the guy that's number 1 on the live tour. And yeah, maybe they only played 9 events, but I mean, how many events have Xander and Scottie played? 12 or so, I mean, I get it. It's not apples to apples, but it is kind of funny how all of this is really not coming together, but at the same time, very, very similar. It's kind of odd, don't you think?
Well, I can play devil's advocate. I could take the live side of things here, which is, what have you done with the real Len Hochberg here? And, there will be people saying, well, the reason Scottie Scheffler has this many wins and this much money and then Xander Schauffele has this much is because the competition is watered down. And if those live guys were here, here, there, everywhere, then it might be different. But yeah. I think everyone is talking about golf. Nobody's not going away from it. So all these things that everyone's complaining about, it's not driving them away. The ratings are up this past week.
Sure.
The ratings were up for the U.S. Open, for an East Coast U.S. Open, one of the best ones in years and stuff. So, that's just Twitter, and that's the bubble, the social media bubble that you and me and a lot of others are in. It's probably not the real world for a lot of golf fans.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt that Twitter is far from the real world. But let's dig into Scottie just for another second here. And to kind of start the rundown dialogue or agenda that, you put out there on Twitter that we were going to discuss. And a lot of people are starting to talk about, where does Scottie's season stand up? Because they threw something out on the coverage, which was no one since what was it? Arnold Palmer in the 60s had won 6 times before July 1st on the PGA Tour. I mean, don't get me, this is historic what he's doing. But do you feel like we can start to make Scottie to Tiger comparisons now? Or is it still too early to do that? What's your take on all of this? I love your perspective because generally speaking, when to pump the brakes.
Well, I think there are 2 different comparisons. There's this year, and then there's forever. And we should not even go near where forever, because as we were just talking off camera before we came on, at this point, Scottie Scheffler just turned 28 last week. At this point, Tiger had almost 40 wins and 8 majors. So no, we can't compare that. But as far as a one season, well, I think he'd have to win another major, and there's only one more chance for that. So, his season was kind of derailed in Louisville, no fault of his own, or depending on who you talk to there. But, I mean, he could get to 9 wins or 10 wins. And then, then that reminds me of Vijay Singh, who no one will compare to Tiger historically. But in that 1 year, what was it, 2004? He had nine wins and a major and overtook Tiger Woods as number 1 in the world. I mean, only 2 guys have ever done that. Duval did that in his incredible stretch, and Vijay Singh did that. So in terms of a 1 year thing, I think it's a fair comparison at this point. 6 wins, all big, or what? 4 signatures and a major. Yeah, 4 signatures, a major, and a players, or we're pretty close to that.
Yeah, I mean, although I still have trouble with this, and I get accused all the time of being like a Tiger truther, but the fact of the matter is that, like Tiger had 2 6-win seasons. So if you just want to go and compare like one season versus one season, he had 2 of those. Of course, he had 4 seasons with 5 wins, if that matters at all either. Scottie has 6 this year, but then, before that, he had 2 last year and he had 4 the year before with the Masters back in 2022 when he kind of kickstarted this whole thing. Tiger also has a season where he had 7 wins. He also has 2 seasons where he had 8 wins. And of course, he has 1 season in 2000 where he had 9 wins. When you start to talk about before the age of 28 or at the age of 28, that Tiger had 39 wins and Scottie has 12, it puts things in perspective. Now, what Scottie's doing from a ball striking point of view, if you put that in a vacuum versus Tiger, then there's no doubt there's comparisons there because those 2 guys are on equal playing fields. But as far as the win totals, and Tiger played less events over the course of his season. It's kind of crazy when you look back and you see all of that. I mean, by the time Tiger was 28, he had been number 1 in the world for 5 straight years. And, Scottie has been incredible for this last, 2 years or so, but, he just needs some time. He needs some time. Now, if he could keep up this level of ball striking for a couple more years, then there's no doubt about it. Now, if you want to talk about history in another way, right? Scottie, I don't know if you've looked at this yet, but Scottie's 5th on the career money list right now. He's got over $70 million. Now, number 1 is Tiger. He's got 121 million. But when you think about it this way, and the gluttony that goes on nowadays, right? Like, you got to give Scottie credit, man. I mean, he's taking advantage of what's going on. $70 million already that he has earned in 126 career events. So that's like $500,000 an event per start that he's making. Whereas Tiger made 121 million in 377 career starts, which is like 320,000 per start. Now, both are staggering to the mind, but it just kind of gives you an idea that in this day and age where if anyone on the PGA Tour or otherwise, live, etc., want to complain that they don't make enough money, that in and of itself, Scottie's made all his money in his last 50 events, basically. He's had 53 events since his first win, and he's had the other 11 wins since then, since that 2022 playoff win over Cantley at the WMPO. It's pretty amazing that he's 5th all time on the career money list. And Rory's number 2, but at least Rory's been around.
Yeah, I hadn't even realized that. It makes perfect sense that, you're getting 4 times as much for a win that you did a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago. What was it? They were getting $1 million and now they're getting $4 million. So that's an easy way to catch up. So I think there are certain areas we can compare the two, but historically, come on. When these things happen, I always think of the old Cincinnati Reds manager, Sparky Anderson, years and years ago, dating myself here. When somebody asked him in the World Series to compare Thurman Munson, the Yankee catcher, to Johnny Bench, he goes, Thurman Munson is a great player, but come on, Johnny Bench. So come on, Tiger Woods.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think Scottie's season this year gets in Tiger's top 5, which I think is pretty much a credit to how good he has been and how otherworldly Tiger has been. Now, shifting gears, let's jump over to the Detroit Golf Club and the Rocket Mortgage Classic. This is the 6th edition. We're out there at this Donald Ross gem. It's got 36 holes. I know 17 are from the North course. 1 is from the South course, par 72, 7,300 yards. Although most people say this golf course plays short, right? As you start to build out your betting cards and your DFS strategy, what 2 or 3 things are you really targeting as far as skill set goes? Because a lot of people will say that these weeks, because the fields are a little weaker or you got to get the 25 under, that it turns out to be pretty random. Well, you had to get the 22 under last week, and it didn't seem very random to me. So do you think it's random? And what are you targeting as far as skill sets?
There are some pretty good winners here. Ricky Fowler was having a pretty darn good year last year. Bryson DeChambeau has won this tournament. I mean, Nate Lashley won the first year, so that's random because we had kind of never seen it before, and he shot 263s. So I still expect to see some of the bigger names up there on the leaderboard, but I mean, it's not a short course, but you can really just let it fly off the tee, and I'm not sure why, because they do have 4-inch rough, and the fairways aren't super wide; they're about 30, maybe low 30s in the landing area, but there was 4-inch rough last year. It didn't matter. There's 4-inch rough this year. I don't think it's going to matter. So, a longer hitter. But as I'm also discovering, as I really break down everything every week, I mean, just about all these guys are longer hitters now. I mean,
Yeah.
you take, Bryson and Rory out of the equation, and, you're 20 yards, 30 yards, and that's not nothing. But, the shorter hitters aren't that short anymore. So, but I do favor length this week. And you look at the stats and the winners over the past few years, and it's been very balanced what they have to do. I mean, the dreaded every club in the bag type of thing. But you do have to putt, and you always have to approach. And what approach is 125, 150, somewhere in there a lot this week. So it really is a balanced tournament. But you do have to get to the mid-20s to be in the conversation.
Well, last week was a par 70. This is 72. So the difference of about, 300 yards or so, it's not totally chewed up in the extra par fives, but it is a very similar skill set. It is somewhat of a wedge fest. And in order to get to essentially 25 under par, these guys over the last couple of years, at least the winners, have averaged like 27, 28 subpar scores over the course of 4 rounds. So that tells you that you got to be able to putt. So this is definitely one of those places where I think you have to feature the putter. And as you go back, there's still like a Finau, but like Bryson's a really good putter. Cam Davis was hot that year. Ricky Fowler, over the course of his career, has been a very good putter. So it's interesting to me. I mean, you look at Adam Hadwin last year, he got in a playoff. He lost like 3.5 strokes off the tee, and the guy was in there because he gained 10 with the putter. So that's this is one of those places where I really feel like you have to start with the flat stick, and you have to be able to gain at least 2 or 3 strokes with the flat stick over the course of the tournament. Now, if you're only going to gain that much, then you better be an uber ball striker. You better be somebody that's really, really good, like an Akshay or something like that. But overall, on these POA bent grass greens, they roll very true. And I think that the 4-inch rough doesn't really prohibit anything, because the last couple of years, the course conditions have been very soft. And it looks like it's going to be somewhat soft. They're getting rain again this week. They've got over an inch in the last 10 days or so. So they just tend not to firm up these greens or whatever. They make them very receptive. I think they just embrace the fact that it's 25 under is the key. I look back to last year, everyone in the top 10, now that was 13 guys when you include ties, all of them gained at least 2 strokes with the putter. And that was just the top 13 players in the field. So, you got to go strong there. You got 50, like you mentioned, 50% of the approach shots are coming in from 150 yards or less. And then this is one of those places where I think that par 4 scoring can really tell a nice story. Guys that can score on the variety of par 4s that they have there. I mean, they got 4 of them under 400 yards, and then they've got another 4 of them over 450, 460. So those kind of polar opposite par 4s, if the guys are gaining 8 to 9 to 10 strokes for the week, then surely they're going to be contenders come Sunday.
It's interesting. You do have to putt well, but sometimes in tournaments, guys who have good putting weeks, and they're whatever, the course is receptive, it catches their eye, whatever the case may be. So I do have some guys, and I know we're maybe getting ahead here, that maybe would not be
Go for it.
considered.
Let's run into it.
Would not be. Well, I'll throw out this stat ahead of getting into our prices and everything. Cam Young shot 59 last week, and Cam Young's not a great putter. And I went and I looked, where would he rank in putting? It's only 70, 71 man field. Where did he must have gained, 10 shots on the field, whatever, in that third round. He was 8th in the third round in putting. Yeah. 7 guys putted better than a guy who shot 59. So that would not be the way that I would get to a 59, or would think a guy would get to a 59, but you could be so good in every other area that you could shoot 59 and just be, have maybe a great putting week for you, great putting day for you. But so that blew me away that he was not even in the top 7 in putting that day.
Well,
There's
I'll knock your
different ways
socks
to
off.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that's a great point. I haven't really considered that coming into this week, but I'll knock your socks off even more. He lost strokes putting on his back 9 Saturday when he shot 59.
Okay.
He was
There you go.
he was negative strokes gained putting en route to shooting 59 for just the back 9 holes if you took them as an aggregate. He was minus 0.19. I just looked at it and it like stuck out to me. I was like, this guy hit the ball so good that he wasn't even a zero, like a flat putter, and he still shot 59. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable
50,
the level.
Should have shot 52. Left all those strokes out there. It just blew it.
Cam Young takes us to the names as usual, so we'll start the DFS strategy because he's in that 10K range with some other guys like Tom Kim. Can Tom Kim be this year's Ricky Fowler coming in on a heater? And is this the guy that can get it done? Or is there somebody else in the 10K land?
Yeah, those are my two favorites. There's only 4 guys in the 10K, and I do like Kim and Young, and it's interesting that Cam Young and Tom Kim and Akshay Bhatia, all of whom were in the top the leaderboard there. Well, for a while at the top 5, top 3 of the leaderboard. They were all playing again this week, and they probably all think, man, I could have won that tournament last week. I should have won that tournament last week. I'm going to go and win this tournament this week. So it'd be interesting to see how the 3 of them play, but I do like Kim. Kim, has not had a good year. This past month has shown signs of turning things around. What was he, top 5 in Canada? And now he had a great week last week. We know he does his best work on these shorter Birdie Fest courses, Wyndham, Shriners. And so this would seem to be in his wheelhouse again this week. And you got to figure that, I don't think he's going to walk out of that tournament with his head down and mutter to himself for a few days. I think he probably couldn't wait to get to Detroit and say, I can win this one this week. There's no Scottie Scheffler there. And Cam Young, it's very difficult to pull the trigger on a guy who is not a great putter at this tournament, but he sold me last week, and he's another, he's had 6 or 7 runners up. So he's always often there without the putter.
The only thing that gives me pause with Tom Kim is this is his 9th start in a row. This is a DFS conversation. If it's a betting conversation, I also don't like the fact that I had him last week at 50-1, and this week he's 12-1, and he's still the same guy, right? So strength of field obviously makes a big difference when it comes to the numbers. But you mentioned Bhatia as well. Down in the 9K, we have Akshay. We have Ricky Fowler, your defending champion. Who do you like down there in the 9s?
Yeah, Bhatia is also 9th in a row or 8th in a row, something like that for him as well. But these guys are like 12 years old, and they can recover like 14 minutes later. So, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be them. So, yeah, but it is a lot. It is a lot. And it's probably more taxing on them mentally than physically for 20. I think they're both 22 or something like, I don't think the physical tax is as great as the mental tax of being on this is a job now. You're on the PGA Tour and you're going from city to city, and you probably don't even know where you are half the time and which airport. And that's the tough thing of playing 9 weeks in a row, the mental fortitude. And these guys, obviously, in the 8th week in a row, were pretty mentally fortitudinous, or whatever I'm trying to say. But I do like Bhatia again this week. He checks off every box in all my key stats, and he just is really, he's number one in the model that I came up with using all the key stats that I have. I mean, you could we talk about him every week. And Taylor Pendrith, a great putter. I was a little surprised to see him that high in the 9,000s, but he's played well here the last 2 years. And yeah, you can get it done without being a great putter, but probably easier if you are a great putter.
There's no doubt. And, no one would ever question your mental fortitude or fortitudeness there, Len Hochberg. All right, the 8K range, there's this like interesting juxtaposition. So there's a conversation around your Chris Kirks and your Robert McIntyres, and these guys are winners this year. And then you also, everyone's talking about Davis Thompson or Matt McNeely, and these guys, they haven't won yet on tour, right? So down in this range here for the eights, I'm curious, are you going with proven winners or are you going with potential?
Maverick McNeely, I mean, got a really raw deal with the schedule. I mean, all the guys who had to sit out 3 weeks in a row, and you could have qualified for the U.S. Open, so there is that. But they really got a raw deal. And Maverick McNeely, rebounding from the shoulder injury, has shown a little bit of flash here and there, but he had 3 straight top 25s, and then he had to grind to a halt. He had nowhere to go to play. I mean, yeah, he could have gone somewhere to play, but it really stopped him just when he was starting to get back to form. And it's a bit of a leap of faith to think that, well, he's just going to pick up right where he was, a month ago. But I do like him this week. We know he can putt. Keith Mitchell, I know that you or Read the Line tweeted something about, about not going to Keith Mitchell this week. He is just incredible ball striker. And, and he hasn't been able to finish better than 9th because he's just been putting terribly. But he did get it to 16 under at the Nelson last month. So he can, and that was a better field than this one, slightly better field than this one. So, that's a little bit of a dicey pick, but I do think Keith Mitchell, if he just putts a little bit, can justify his price. And Ryan Fox, is one of the longest hitters on tour and one of the best putters on tour. It's like top 20 in driving distance, top 10 in putting. That's a pretty good combination to have if you're a professional golfer. So I do like him as well in the 8s.
All right, down to the 7s. There's always this age-old argument, form versus course fit, right? So you got a guy like Taylor Moore who's coming in who's like got below average form. But his last 2 starts here is a 4th and a 6th. So does the fact that his course history is so great attract you for a DFS card, or are you just kind of skipping over a guy like that because you got to have both? But where do you stand on that argument?
It's really the field test, and I'll get to that in the 6s. I'll have a good example when we get to the 6s. But it does weigh heavily on me if a guy does well here. 2 years is not a lot of years to do it, but I did give Taylor Moore a very close look and did not go with Taylor Moore. My guys in the 7s, Mark Hubbard has not missed a cut this year. We're talking 2 majors and the Players included. He's like 7,700, and he can get really good with the putter as well. Nick Dunlap plays in the hardest tournaments all the time. He's in all the signature events. He's in the majors, and I think, he's really battle tested. He has not been great in those tournaments, but I think he's going to, maybe feel a little bit better in this field, not having to go against the best of the best. And one guy I really wanted to point out, Luke Clanton, the Florida State 20-year-old junior. What really caught my eye was his prices, both in DFS and the betting market. He's 7,000 in DraftKings. And some of the other guys, some of the other collegiates or Miles Russell, the high school guy, are much lower. And I don't know why Luke Clanton was only 7,000. And then I went over to the DK Sportsbook and I saw it was 100 to 1. And I go, that's really low odds for a 20-year-old college. And then I looked right before we came on this morning and he's down to 90 to 1. So people are betting Luke Clanton. And I really, he finished 41st. He almost beat Neil Shipley for low am at the U.S. Open. Apples to, whatever, coconuts, to compare, they were Donald Ross courses, but, not really, so much harder, the U.S. Open. So I don't know. I put him down there. I really just wanted to highlight Luke Clanton and for people to look at him because it's very interesting to me what's going on with his numbers and why he is considered so much more of a favorite than you would think a 20-year-old in this tournament.
Well, that's an interesting point for sure. Especially because somebody at 100 to 1 could be Justin Lauer. It could be, it could be a number of guys that have what we would think to be at least the savvy to be contenders because they've proven to do it before at a PGA Tour level, and have a kid that's straight out of college do that is interesting. You give me pause to maybe take another look at why Luke Clanton is such a good fit here. But speaking of fits and you know, maybe having fits, because it gets pretty wild down here. We get into 6K land, and we haven't even touched the bottom of it yet. But let's start with the sixes first. Who are you featuring in the sixes?
Chandler Phillips is in the upper sixes. I've gone with him before in some tournaments, and he's a Texas guy, and he's played well in Texas, and we're not in Texas, but he is 17th in approach, and we got to look at things like that. I look at things like that in the 6,000s. You look for just a sliver. You're not going to find guys who are good across the board or something. You got to get to the weekend and then maybe go from there. Webb Simpson, joke a lot about Webb getting into all the signature events, but he doesn't do terrible there. He doesn't beat every guy, but he beat 20 guys, 24 guys last week. He's only missed 2 cuts all year, and he does it, and he gets into a lot of tournaments that do have cuts. So it's not like he's just getting there, So I do like him this week. And the guy I wanted to point out was Troy Merritt. Talk about course form, course fit, or history and stuff. Last year, Troy Merritt came into this tournament with 14 straight missed cuts. 14 straight missed cuts. I think he made the cut at the Sony in January and then didn't make a cut. And here we are in late June or, whenever the tournament was played last year. And he finished 17th here. And he plays this course well every year. He was like, I'm getting the years wrong, but one was in the last 3 years before that, 14th, 8th, and 2nd. So I took a shot on him last year. I said, he plays this course well every year. And I went with a guy who had missed 14 straight cuts, and he paid off. It says T17. Well, hasn't missed 14 straight cuts this year. He's missed about half of them, but he did have a tie for 10th recently. Forget the tournament, what it is. But this guy, this is Christmas morning for Troy Merritt. This is his Super Bowl every year, the Rocket Mortgage. So I do like him at 6,300. I think he is.
14 straight cuts. Oh man. I mean, this year, if he's made half his cuts, I expect him to be top 5 with that level of proficiency for sure. All right, down in the 5Ks, and I'm always thinking about different ways to try to introduce these categories, right? And we've got such an interesting field that we've got one player, Miles Russell, who's 15 years old, and we've got another player in the 5K range, that's Stewart Cink, that's the reverse of that. He's 51 years old. All right. And there's all a bunch in between. Can you find anybody down here that can make the cut for us?
It's never a sure thing, but this is always, I always say that the 5,000s are not for the faint of heart, but I always like to give people a couple of options if they have gone through the first 5 guys in their lineup and they're stuck and they just need to go down there and stuff. So my 2 favorite plays, both at the top of the 5s at 59. So they're the best of the 5s. Carson Young joining his no relation Cam Young in my RotoWire article. He was 17th at the Amex. This is stuff I look like. Can a guy get super low? It's not the only indicator, but some guys just don't get low. And they're not a good fit this week. They may be better golfers than Carson Young, but he can get low. And Pearson Cootie, not Parker, Pearson this week, also 59. I know he was 5th, but that tournament was in Texas, and that was a special thing for him. But, they are my 2 favorite plays in the 5s. And if they make the cut, that would be, a huge win for anyone in the 5s. And if you play anyone in the 5s and you get to the weekend, give yourself a pat on the back.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Now, you mentioned one of my best bet picks of the week earlier. You touched upon him quickly and then you moved on, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time on Taylor Pendrith. Now, I know he won a little while ago, but TPC Craig Ranch, in my mind, is a great comp course for what we're going to see here. It's definitely a place where you could blast away, and you just got to go as low as you can. And Taylor Pendrith showed that he can handle that. And what's interesting about that he came back at Wells Fargo and he played good, and he's played good. He's had a bunch of top 30s over the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's continued to play well. And if you go with the Bryson, which is the bomber / putter narrative, which also worked for Finau, which worked for Cam Young and runner up, in 2022. Like, if you go with that narrative, then I tell you what, like, this is definitely a guy in this field who stands out, because the way that he's hitting the golf ball right now, he was second here in 2022. I know he was a bunch of strokes behind Finau, but he likes the golf course, 14th last year. For me, he's in the middle there. He's at like plus 4,500. He started the week at plus 5,000. So he's dropping, and people like his chances as much as I do. The second guy, I'm going to go much further down the board. And I believe this is going to be one of those years where we're going to get somebody out of the triple digits like we did with Cam Davis and we got with Nate Lashley in the first edition. But a lot of the guys I'm featuring are like in that like 90 to 125 range. And this guy's at 125. And this is S.H. Kim. Now, this is a guy that when you put him on like a super hard golf course, although he did make the cut at the U.S. Open, which was very nice to see, he's pretty average when it comes down to it, because his superpower is the putter. And when you take him to birdie fests like TPC Craig Ranch, where he finished fourth, this guy, he drives the ball fairly well. I'm going to say he's above average driver on the PGA Tour, but he rolls it and he can chip and putt. Well, now, I'm not so worried about chipping this week, but I am worried about scramblers. We've got 4 par 4s under 400 yards. This guy's he's going to hit it down there. He's going to have 50 yards to the green, and he's very, very good in this field as far as scramblers goes. If you're not looking at that type of skill set, you should be, because there's also 4 par 5s, one of which is 630. So everyone's going to be hitting a pitch into that one for their third. So the putter, the ability to hit touch wedge shots, and the driver at, plus 12.5. I mean, this guy's 125 to 1. I like this guy's chances, because I think if you could go nuclear with the putter here, then you stand a chance to be in the top 5 and part of the consideration with 9 holes to go come Sunday. And then assuming they don't start moving the last hole of the day and there's no protesters, maybe we have a chance.
When I first saw the DraftKings prices, I looked at them and I thought Batia's in the 9s. There are 4 guys ahead of Batia. I said Batia's going to be super highly owned. And now I've been looking at the places that actually track this sort of thing, and I don't do that. That was the eye test there. But Taylor Pendrith is below Batia in DFS 96 or something like that. And indications are he might be the highest owned guy in the field. So a lot of people are with you on that and do like Taylor Pendrith a lot. So I was very interested to hear that you like him as well.
Yeah, there's just a number of things coming together there that make complete sense. This is and he's played good on hard golf courses too, which really wasn't his MO a year or two ago. But here's a guy again that's ultra. The guy's won on tour, and he's still not in the top 10 in points for the President's Cup team on the international side. Now, that's not to say that they have this world-class team, but the guys that are up there near the top, your Sung Jae Ims and your Nick Taylors, and this guy wants to get back on the President's Cup team. He wants to play in Canada. He's already won once this year. I feel like he has that extra motivation, that extra kick to get it across the finish line, and I think that a lot of other people feel that way too.
Yeah, and I guess what the guys who qualify on points have already been decided, but Mike Weir has some decisions to make. And you got to figure that the Canadians have a little bit of an edge if it comes down to one guy here or one guy there, that, it just naturally lean to a Canadian. And he's got a few Canadians to consider. Adam Hadwin is, now he got bumped by Corey Connors when I'm thinking of the Olympics. Duh.
But similarly,
we'll edit this out.
Yeah, but similarly, Nick Taylor is really the only guy that probably he and Connors are the only ones that are Canadians that are guaranteed a spot on that team.
Yeah,
Mac Hughes, Taylor Pendrith, these guys are, Adam Hadwin, they're fighting to get on that team, and this is a really good spot. If Taylor Pendrith wins twice in 1 year, right? Or at least contends and he comes in second on Sunday. Like, he's built himself a really good case to get on that team as a captain's pick, being from Canada. And, similar sort of greens, like this type of golf course is very similar to Royal Montreal, and then it's classically designed, so there's for me, there's a lot of reasons why Pendrith is so popular. There's no doubt about that. But you know who else is super popular? That's us on the Rundown every single week there, Len Hochberg, at 11:15 Eastern time, 8:15 Pacific time, with you there with your Dodgers hat on each and every week. We have the tractor tournament next week. We've got the Rocket this week. We're building back up towards the 4th major championship of the year. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Big shout out to Stewie for being there on the comments board. We love you too. And of course, on behalf of Len Hochberg, I'm Keith Stewart. Thanks for watching the RotoWire Rundown.